Okay, so hey everybody, welcome to the Peterson's Farms podcast. If you haven't been here before, you're in for a real treat. We have Anne. Now, Anne, you're going to have to make sure I pronounce your last name right. What's the right way to do that?
Malleau.
Malleau. I think I knew that, but I was just like, I'm not even going to risk it.
It's all the vowels,
Yeah,
right? Messes you up.
That's right. Well, anyway, she is the big boss over at Global Animal Partnership, and she's gave us about 30 minutes of our time here in a very busy schedule. So let's dive into it real quickly, Anne. For everybody who's not familiar with you, maybe just, I don't know, a couple minutes on who you are and where you come from and what gives you the skill set to be running that organization.
Sure. Well, I'm Canadian. I actually live in Canada, so I do my job from my farm in Canada. I'm married to a farmer, but I didn't start out that way. I grew up in the city and decided after probably too many James Herriot books that I thought I wanted to be a vet. So I went to the University of Guelph and did a degree in agriculture and animal science. And because I came from the city, I spent a lot of time really trying to learn about farm animals. So worked a lot in the barns at the university and wherever I had an opportunity. And then when I graduated, I had spent some time working with a researcher there by the name of Dr. Ian Duncan, and he looked at poultry behavior and welfare. And so I had worked for him for a couple of summers because I just found, and it's funny, I hated birds actually when I first went to school because I had worked at a vet clinic and been bit by a lot of cockatiels. And so when I went to work with him, he's like, well, I work with birds, but I decided to give it a go anyways, and really, really enjoyed the work. And so he is a poultry behavior ethologist. So he studies animal behavior in poultry. That's his specialty. And so I stayed on and did a master's with him in poultry behavior and welfare. And then I went down to the University of Georgia in Athens, Georgia, and worked for the bioengineering department for a little while, helping them with their experiments, and then went and worked for a molecular genetics startup company and ran their farm. And then got I was sort of starving to death, let's be honest. And then came home, started doing something completely unrelated to agriculture. I was in sales, but it's amazing how much I actually use those skills every day. And then decided to go back and do an MBA in agribusiness. And it was there that I had the opportunity to work with Whole Foods. I filled in for a meeting and then sort of started on the journey of animal welfare at a corporate level. And so I think I bring sort of a unique balance of sort of the research, the business, and the practical to the table. And I actually implemented the GAP program for Whole Foods Market. And so I guess the lesson here is be careful what you wish for, because I had a lot of, opinions about what worked and what didn't work when we first implemented the program. And so when the previous ED parted ways, I was asked to sort of step in and help the organization grow. And so that's what I did.
There we are. Well, that's just a beautiful career path, really. Isn't it funny how we all end up somewhere in a career in business, and it may not be where you really think you're going to go at, let's say 16 to 22, whatever, in those ages. I think for any listeners in that age group, if you happen to be about that age, I say just really keep your mind open to the opportunities. I mean, I wouldn't even be at Peterson's if the president of Peterson's, Cody, a guy I happened to go to kindergarten with, and just went know him forever, hadn't have showed up to work the first day thinking he was going to be the marketing director, and then be told, oh, you're going to be the director of QA, and him just say, well, okay, I mean, we wouldn't be here talking if he hadn't have made that kind of crazy willingness to just say, whatever, I'll take the job, let's do it. I love the perspective you have as a city girl, now really deep into animal agriculture. And I think that's a great perspective for the audience to know and understand that you really can relate to somebody who may have never had that opportunity to be really close to animal agriculture. And now you've had a career or took a career path that puts you right next to animal agriculture. So I think it's a great it just gives you a good perspective to have those debates with from both sides of the table.
It really sort of challenged, I think, thinking. There's been many times when, you've had to sort of prove yourself that you knew what you were talking about. And one of the lessons that someone told me a long time ago is, always be curious, never ever lose that. And if there's nothing wrong with asking questions. And I think the more that you ask questions, even if you think you know something, the better perspective you bring to the table.
Now, we haven't even really touched on GAP. What is that? What is the company? What is the purpose of it? This podcast is about giving people kind of really deep access and insight to our industry from a lot of perspectives that they may not even be aware of. So this is the chance for them to hear about third-party verified humane treatment of animals and how it actually happens.
Yeah, well, GAP was started in 2008. It's a nonprofit organization. And really, at its simplest, it is an animal welfare standards and labeling organization. So we're a little team. We have a farm animal welfare team and we have a business team. And we have a really unique standard in that it is not a one size fits all standard. It is what we called it step levels, or it's tiered is another way of thinking about it. And what's really great about that is it's like, I think of it as a roadmap, so we bring people in at our base certification. And then from there, the standard helps people understand how they can make change, but in a way that's supported. So it's good for the farmers and the animals, of course, but then it's also good for the consumers because they, really have a clear path as to what the different step levels mean, because the framework is consistent across all of the farm animals. And so if you're picking up a package and you see step 1 or step 4, or step 2, you have a good sense of what that means. The other thing that's unique about GAP is that, as you mentioned, we are third-party certified. So what that means is that GAP doesn't do the audits. We don't do the audits. We don't do this. We don't make the certificate decisions. So we accredit, so basically approve third-party certifiers. We work with 4 of them around the world. And so we make sure that they are administering our standard to the way that we want. But they go out, they're the ones that do the audits. They issue the audit reports, corrective actions, or certificates, and they manage the program for us. So another way to sort of think about that is the separation of church and state. And while that's important, is it really takes bias out. We've been doing this for a long time. We established relationships with people, and that can cloud judgment. So by being able to have that differentiation and have the third-party auditors and certifiers making those decisions, it really does remove bias out of the equation.
Totally. And as a brand, I want that credibility. Like I want to be able to represent and show, look, we're not buying GAP off to get approved. We couldn't, even if I'm friends with Anne, and I'll tell you, she's a tough cookie. She will negotiate your tail off because she's there. She is, in the way I think about it, you're like the animal's lawyer. Like you are out there making their case and holding, look, we're all trying to make money, build our business. So when those words come into play, as ethical and as real as you want to be, and Peterson's is, we can still fall prey to that. Let's tweak that one little thing, make a little penny or two more. No, somebody's got to hold. So I'm so glad GAP stands in that whole kind of advocating for the animals and building a program that also, in a way, advocates for small farmers and ranchers to get money for the effort they're making.
One of the things that's been really important to GAP is, you can have a great standard, but if you don't help the farmers and even the brands that are in the program, then it can really sort of fall apart, because the way people buy animals these days is very different than how they did 100 years ago. But if you talk to the average consumer, a lot of them still think that the grocery store gets in, carcasses and they cut them down and then they put them, in their coolers for sale, but it doesn't work that way. And so what we've done is really tried to work with as many different brands as we can so that the farmers can sell as much of their animals that are GAP certified as possible, so that it keeps everybody whole, keeps everybody, just sustainable. There's many different ways to look at sustainability. And, if you've got a pet food guy and a baby food company and a sausage maker, and a hamburger maker and retail and food service and all of those people that are buying from the farms, then everybody wins. And the consumer, of course, at the end. So you have great animal welfare on farm, but then you're able to build a path and be able to make that grow. And, right now GAP certifies over 400 million animals annually across 11 different countries. And so that impact and having that many animals is really important to be able to continue to grow the program.
If people were watching on YouTube, they'll see, they could have seen my eyebrows raised when you talk about sustainability and money, because I think it's so really imperative that sustainability has to go along with the financial sustainability, not just is this regenerative, is this matter of fact. So anyways, I think everybody gets that point, but money has to be thought of in sustainability. How about the word regenerative? What is that? Are y'all going to make a certification for proving we're regenerative?
Yeah, that is a great question. So, I mentioned that we're this sort of roadmap, and we support all different types of production systems, right? You can have good animal welfare inside and out. And for us, I think regenerative makes more sense to us at this point with ruminant species. I think it's a little bit more challenging to see how with pork and poultry, how regenerative works. But really at the end of the day, Neil, it's not our core competency, right? Welfare and production is where we're really good. And obviously we've got some higher level steps that are pasture based. So we know about managing pasture, but that whole soil health piece, it's not my area of expertise. And so what GAP's been doing, we've been looking for a partner, because rather than, have someone whose area of expertise is in animal welfare doing animal welfare and us doing regenerative when it's not our area of expertise, what we've been trying to do is find partners, so that we can each have our areas of expertise, but work together. It also, in theory would help reduce audit costs and audit fatigue for the farmers if we were able to collaborate more. Right now, we've not had a ton of success with that, but it is something that we're looking to do because, it's important to consumers. It's important to the world. But I don't think starting a new program and then trying to be everything is necessarily working, because unless you have a lot of money behind you and you're able to bring in those areas of expertise, it's really hard to do a good job across the board. But if we can collaborate and work together, then, and also share learnings. We've been at this for a long time. One of the things I see with new organizations is they're making the same mistakes we made a long time ago. So it's like, so let's work together and see what we can do to really move the needle.
Yeah, I love it. When you hear the word regenerative, is that what you think of, soil health? I think it's hard to define. What is even the definition?
I think it's challenging too, because what works for, a rancher in Texas isn't necessarily going to work for a rancher in the Midwest, right? Different soil, different climate, different microbiology. And I think while there is fundamental guideposts and guardrails for regen ag, I think it's still new in terms of how you actually apply it. And I think some of the challenge too is that people are looking at it as a differentiator and as a way, to make premiums. And, I don't know if there is a path forward with that. There may be, if you're able to, again, like put different attributes together, but I don't think it's easy. And when you talk to some of the regulatory officials in terms of like labeling, because we get asked all the time, is GAP going to do this? And I'm like, oh, not without a lot more resources. I'm not going to do it. But once people start marketing it and talking about it, the horse kind of left the stable, so to speak. And then being able to make sure the consumers understand it so that the brands have value, I think is a big challenge.
Yeah, it's a little bit like the Wild West right now. Everybody's sees a consumer inclination to pay a premium for a regenerative product. So people are trying, I think it's just a big onus for us brands. Well, everybody really that's a stakeholder in the industry to try to clear that up. You just don't want to be real confusing, which sometimes it's inevitable. But
well, and I think like I can go into a farm and make a lot of change in a relatively short period of time. But with regen and looking at changing, your soil health practices and seeing the impacts of that, it's much slower. A lot of times people talk about sort of a 5 to 10 year cycle. That gets harder to monetize, right? And especially if that's different and if people are at different starting points. And so I think it's an absolutely like really important initiative, but what it looks like and how we define it and how we measure it, I think is challenging.
Yeah. I love talking to you. It's so fun just to have somebody that's in these kind of niches all day, every day with these people, having these same conversations, asking these questions. I don't typically get to be. Okay, so we're going to spin around a little bit and talk about sales. You said you used those sales skills you found when you did a little bit of sales pretty much every day. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. I will say that running this program is probably the hardest job I've ever had, because we are selling a program, right? There needs to be a value proposition for people to work with us. And people are on different ends of that spectrum as well. Like some people might be like, okay, go find me some product and then I'll put it in my quesadillas. Or other people might say, okay, I need to transition my supply chain. What does that look like? And at the end of the day, it always comes down to how much is it going to cost me and what do I get for that cost? And we're a tiny little wee team, tiny little resource bank. And so being able to sell the value of GAP and what, if you get a brand to invest in the program, what we can do to help promote animal welfare, promote the brand. It really is as much about working with companies as it is about improving animal welfare on farm. And it's one of those things that a lot of people are like, no, it can't be about that. But I actually think that's some of what is GAP's special sauce is it's not just about doing great things on farm. It's being able to talk about that and to bring people along and to show the value. And there's the ethical component, but there's risk management in that, right? There's a lot of change in the protein industry right now, right? We're seeing a lot of alternatives and the growth of alternatives. And so, why would I worry about changing stuff on farm? Why don't I just go, with an alternative protein? So we get the GAP value. What is the GAP value from I think a variety of different angles. And we're also having to evolve as well. Like one of the things from GAP's perspective is we are firm believers in continuous improvement, right? What can we do to not only move the needle for animal welfare, but continue to move the needle for the brands that work with us? And right now, our big initiative has been around technology. How can we bring technology into the program to make things more efficient? And traceability, right? How can we improve traceability and chain of custody and all of those things?
I've got 6 questions rolling around in my brain, but every time you talk, I get a new one. Like now I want to say, is blockchain tied to any of that technology you're checking out?
We're actually building the frameworks because, a lot of people will say, I want that. But then when you say, okay, this is what that costs, and they're like, ooh, maybe I don't want that, but I want like the slimmer version of that. And so what we're doing is really building the foundations so that we're able to either go a specific direction like blockchain or be able to have the framework to work within other systems. That's been probably the most challenging thing too is, we stem from working with a retailer So you get very used to working within distribution centers and systems that function for retail. But then you move to food service, and that's a whole other game, right? And so you're like, okay, so now I need to build the system that can work with both, so that, because both are important, and sometimes both are the answer to making things work. And then there's pet food, which are really they're our little shining gold star for us, because they've been the driver. They've helped us drive the program more than any other category, to be honest.
Yeah. That's just awesome. I mean, I relate to that because Peterson's was mainly a retail focused brand and company. And we've started, you learn the other side of the coin, if you want to say the food service side of the coin, the industrial kind of big tech campus side of the coin, all those things, they want some different stuff. Their expectations are surprisingly different. Like the spec sheet is super important on that side of the coin, where on the retail side of the coin, it's not as important because you almost have a spec sheet on the product with the label. Well, anyways, we've learned some of that exact same lesson that, man, you have to learn a lot pretty quickly to kind of get in that game. I want to know how, I've said this a few times, and it is the truth. I want to know how you feel about it. People, so we'll do a webinar and we have questions from the audience, and some of them are like, okay, well, when is Peterson's going to be step 5, 3, 2? Like, what's your plan to move up the ladder? And what I say, and what is really true, is we're trying to transition more of our pigs. We're trying to have an effect from no certified humane, or not certified humane, but global animal partnership audit. We're trying to get as many from there to step 1, and really not so focused on going from step 1 to 2, 3, 4, whatever. How do you feel about that? Are you like a little bit unhappy with me, or happy, or
No,
what do you think?
Not at all. For a couple of reasons. So, I think you can have good welfare indoors and outdoors. They're just different. You have different challenges, right? But I also think the one thing that sort of gets discounted with our program is when we review our standard, we review all of the different levels. But fundamentally, we don't buy your product. And so the fact that you've come in and made a commitment to working with GAP is really what we're really excited about. But if you have a customer that comes to you and says, hey, Neil, I want you to put your pigs outside. If you have a customer that's asking you to do that, and you have the supply chain to do that, or you have one earmark that you want us to help you with, then we can do that and then help you, if you need help with all the other bits of the animal. I think it's a really, really complex equation that a lot of people think also that there is the premium, it's sort of like you get 1 cent for step 1, 2 cents for step 2, 3 cents, and so far. And it really doesn't work that way. It's really about carcass utilization and market at the end of the chain. Like we had this with beef, where we had everyone saying, oh, all your beef is step 1 except for your grass fed, and like, how are we going to get it outside? Well, how it happened is we had customers saying, I don't want grass fed beef, I want grain finished beef, but I don't want it from a feedlot. So then once we had a customer saying we want that, then we went out to try and find a partner. And at that point, the beef industry thought we were crazy, but we found a partner in Country Natural Beef. And we built this pilot program, and now 85% of all of the beef ranches that are in the program are step 4, because we figured out a way to finish them on grain, but in pasture environments. But if we wouldn't have had that customer, then it wouldn't have happened, right? You need the farms, but you need the customer. And then you need somebody that's looking for step 4 product for all the other bits, because that end customer probably isn't going to buy it all. And so that's something that people, like, we've often heard from some of the other NGOs, that we need to have a requirement to move up the steps. And really, we're capitalists. We live in a capitalist world. It's a market driven. We can't force that because we don't buy the product. So we're happy to support and to show, the different attributes that the different step levels have. But I've never been a supporter of pushing people where there isn't a market, because they'll fail.
Yeehaw. Consumers drive. I mean, if you're a consumer and you want something, go tell your retailer. If you're a retailer and you have consumers wanting something, go tell your vendors, tell Gap. Like, that's how it works. That's why we're trying to tell this story with all of those people kind of as a piece of it: consumers, customers, vendors, employees of Peterson's, peers. That's the group of people that drives innovation, market change, all those things. Wow. I do just really love talking to you, because we have just this kind of similar expectation. Like, we want to have success really filter across the whole thing, from the farmer up to the retailer, up to the consumer. I mean, if you don't see all of those places being successful, it's not quite as fun.
Absolutely. And it's not long lasting. It's a very short term, right? Products come to market, and if nobody wants them, no one's willing to pay for them. Nobody wants the attributes that they bring, then they die a quick and painful death. And it is painful.
Yeah. All right. Hey, that's 30 minutes and it flies by like no time. I don't want to sign off without giving you an opportunity to plug anything Gap has going on, or that you just want somebody to know about that I don't know about, that, I haven't asked you about.
We've got two like big initiatives that we're getting ready to launch here in June. So we're going to be going into the aquaculture sphere. So we'll be launching a tiered animal welfare standard for farmed Atlantic salmon. So the first of its kind in the world. So we're excited about that. And then we've been spending years working about improving broiler genetics with our Better Chicken project. And we'll be launching some products with that coming very soon as well. So lots in the news. And we're really excited to be able to, again, like, just continue to sort of push the envelope while supporting all of the farmers and brands that we work with.
Oh, and I will sell you, because, hey, everybody, if you're listening, if you're a brand, I don't know, but we have listeners all across the gamut, from consumers to brands to competitors. You should give Gap a good hard look. They will definitely support you. They'll work hard to add value more. I would say they underpromise and overdeliver in a big way. And I really, just as a guy, Anne's not paying me for this plug. It's just true. They're great to work with. I'm able to talk to the director. She's a busy lady. You can't just always have her cell phone number, but you can get to the top of the organization, and that's nice from a brand's perspective. Shout out to Diane, all the team over at Gap. That whole group is just fun to work with and a great resource.
Well, thank you so much. We love working with Peterson's.
All right, everybody. Hey, there you go. Please go Google Global Animal Partnership. Go to their website. We'll put all these things in the show notes. Connect with Anne on LinkedIn. Just follow what they're up to, and you're going to learn a lot, and you're going to be more educated and be able to make a better decision when you go to the grocery store or the restaurant and you see something about humanely treated animals. You're going to understand it better. And thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Neil. All right. We'll talk to you guys later.
See you around. Have a good one.
Yeah, you too. Bye-bye.